3 full-sized buses rolled up to my gate that morning, their diesel engines coughing smoke into the air, and within minutes more than 100 strangers were pouring onto my land with picnic baskets, folding tables, volleyball nets, acting like it was their own park. I stood there barefoot, coffee in hand, watching the invasion unfold. And then, with one tap on my phone, I locked that heavy steel gate behind them. Suddenly, 3 busloads of people realized they were trapped, stranded on property that was never theirs, and their fearless leader, Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, was about to face the biggest humiliation of her life. My name's not important, but what is important is that this land has been in my family for 3 generations. I've worked it, mowed it, raised goats on it, repaired fences by hand. It was never part of the subdivision across the highway, never under the thumb of an HOA, and I intended to keep it that way. But Karen, the pink-suited tyrant who called herself the HOA president, had different plans. For months, she sent me letters, fines for having goats, threats over the shade of red. I painted my barn, accusations about where I parked my truck. She even tried to drag me into her monthly HOA meetings, claiming my land was part of some buffer zone. I ignored her. Until one morning when 3 buses rolled up and spilled a crowd onto my pasture as if I had volunteered to host their summer extravaganza. I'll be honest, at first I just froze. I stood there, coffee cup halfway to my lips, watching kids run toward my goatsmen unloading coolers, teenagers stringing bunting from my oak trees. Karen stood in front of them all, perched like a general in her neon pink pantsuit, shouting through a megaphone about community rights and reclaiming public space. She was painting me as the villain, selfish, greedy, refusing to share what she claimed was our land. My heart hammered in my chest. For a moment, I thought maybe this is too big for me. Maybe I should just let them have their stupid picnic, clean up the mess later, avoid a scene. I felt small standing there in front of 3 busloads of people, all of them staring at me like I was the bad guy. But then I remembered the gate. I had reinforced it 2 weeks earlier after finding a flyer that mapped out my property as the new HOA park. I knew Karen wasn't bluffing. So when the clock on my phone hit 9:00 a.m., I tapped the button. The steel arms swung shut with a clang that silenced the crowd. Confusion rippled through them as the keypad light blinked red. The first bus driver walked over, sweating under his cap, muttering that Karen had told him this was a public event. I didn't even have to raise my voice. I just leaned against the post and said, 3 buses of uninvited guests. That's trespassing. Karen tried to rally them, shouting through her megaphone that I was lying, that this was communal land, that she was defending their rights. But her eyes betrayed her. People started looking around nervously, whispering to each other. Some kids were crying. Some adults were already packing up their picnic baskets. A zoning officer I recognized from the county sat under a tree with his arms crossed, shaking his head. He caught my eye and muttered, "This isn't public land. She lied to us." That was the first crack. Still, the longer they stood out there, the more pressure built. It was hot, there was no shade, and the crowd grew restless. A group of teenagers filmed the chaos on their phones day 1 of HOA Gone Wild, and the videos went viral before the sheriff even arrived. Parents tugged at Karen's sleeve, demanding answers. Others cursed under their breath. Someone shouted, "This is kidnapping," and for a split second doubt crept in. Was I wrong? Was I about to get hauled off for holding people hostage? I almost reached for the gate control, ready to open it and walk away from the mess. My hands shook. The idea of fighting hundreds of angry neighbors made me feel small and tired, like maybe I should just let it slide. Let them trample my land and forget the whole thing. Then the zoning officer stood up and said it louder this time. She told everyone this was community land. It isn't. He owns it. He called me about this weeks ago. Hearing those words felt like someone yanked me back onto solid ground. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't wrong. I had prepared for this. And if Karen wanted a spectacle, I was going to let her have one. By late morning, local reporters showed up. Their cameras zoomed in on Karen, sweating in her pink suit, barking contradictory orders, and on the stranded families, sweltering in the heat. She tried to spin the story, telling reporters I had unlawfully imprisoned her community. But then someone shoved one of her flyers into the camera, clear as day, my land mapped out with cartoon buses and picnic tables. "She lied to us," a mother shouted, holding her toddler on her hip. Another man yelled, "We paid fees for this." The crowd turned. People began heckling Karen, laughing at her slogans, filming her meltdown. I didn't have to say a word. I just stood there by the gate, calm, quiet, sipping water, letting her own lies collapse in front of everyone. And then came the moment that flipped everything. 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled up behind the news vans, lights flashing. The sheriff stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered sunglasses glinting in the sun. He looked at the buses, the crowd, the wreckage of folding tables, and let out a long whistle. Karen ran toward him, shrieking through her megaphone, "Arrest him! He's holding us hostage!" The sheriff didn't even flinch. He just asked, "Ma'am, why are you and all these people on his property?" That single question cut through everything. Karen stammered, gestured vaguely at my pasture, and claimed it was community land. The sheriff held out his hand. "Show me the deed." She froze. Of course she couldn't. Then he turned to me. "You got paperwork?" I pulled out my folder titled Survey Tax Records. He skimmed them, nodded once, and said, "That'll do." The crowd erupted. People shouted at Karen, accused her of fraud, demanded their money back. Her own board members backed away, one waving the flyer like evidence in court. News cameras caught every second Karen flushed makeup streaked with sweat, her clipboard trembling in her hand. For once, she had nothing to say. The sheriff asked me quietly if I wanted to press charges. I looked at the crowd, families, kids, neighbors who'd been duped, and said, "Not today. I just want them gone." He nodded and ordered everyone back on the buses. Engines roared to life, doors hissed open, and people streamed out of my pasture like an army in retreat. Some muttered apologies as they passed. Others glared at Karen. A few reporters shouted questions, their microphones shoved through the bars. Karen stood alone, trying desperately to rally them, but nobody listened anymore. I walked to the gate slowly, each step heavy on the gravel, and looked her in the eye. She hissed at me. "You've humiliated me. This isn't over." And I told her flat, calm, steady, "You humiliated yourself. All I did was lock the gate." The sheriff gave the signal. I tapped my phone, and the steel arms swung open. One by one, the buses rolled out, kicking up dust, their passengers silent or furious, pressing their faces against the windows. Karen was the last to leave, shuffling toward a waiting SUV, her pink suit grimy, her clipboard hanging like a broken shield. The cameras followed every second of her walk of shame. Then the gate clanged shut again, sealing my land back into the quiet it had always known. I stood there for a moment, hand resting on the cool steel, watching the dust settle on the empty road. My boots crunched on the gravel as I turned back toward the house. No cheering, no celebrating, just the strange calm after a storm. The goats grazed in the distance as if nothing had happened. But I knew everything had changed. Karen had tried to steal my land with lies and bravado, and instead she exposed herself in front of the whole county. The lesson. Sometimes you don't have to shout or swing fists. Sometimes all it takes is standing your ground, holding the line, and letting arrogance destroy itself.